it comes to cars and keyboards, I like them classic, and I like them powerful. Even with so much cool stuff on the market these days, there's still something so visceral and exciting about playing or driving one of the true classics. And on a true classic vintage synthesizer, sometimes all it takes is a single note, and you instantly realize why that keyboard is so highly sought after. Hi, I'm Sam Mims with Syntaur, and when I get a chance to restore one of the true classic synthesizers, I'm all in. Sometimes it's a bumpy ride, but it's a fun ride all the same. So come along with us as the Syntaur team rescues one of the very first analog polyphonic synthesizers. Here at Syntaur, we live to bring old synthesizers back to life. We find vintage keyboards wherever we can, and our crew restores them back to their original splendor. We also supply parts to tens of thousands of customers all around the world so that they can restore and repair their own keyboards. At our shop in Texas, we have on hand parts for the synths used by pros from the 1960s all the way to today's brand new keyboards. Our inside and out knowledge has made us known as the Synth Wizards. I've gotten several analog synthesizers from Russia over the years, and I'm really intrigued by them. The first I got was an Elita, which is somewhat similar to a Mini Moog with its 3 oscillators, and it sounds really fat. There was even a blurb about this one in Keyboard magazine back in 1995. Next, I got a Rhythm 2 monosynth, and its sound was uniquely edgy and aggressive. I even had an offer at one point to buy several hundred of these, still new in the boxes from the factory, but it involved shipping a container across the ocean and then by rail, and putting a lot of trust and a lot of money in people on the other side of the globe whom I could only collude with from a distance. I eventually had to say "niet" to that one. Finally, I got a Tom 1501 string machine. And like all of these Russian synthesizers, it sounds quite good, but the construction is a bit flimsy. Right now, for instance, the Elita no longer powers up, and the Tom 1501 only plays brass sounds and nothing else. Owning a Russian synth is pretty cool in my book, but if you're gonna do it, be prepared to spend some time and money on upkeep. One other synth I got from Russia, though, is a different story. It's a Roland Jupiter 4, a Japanese-made classic from way back in 1978 that helped kick off the era of polyphonic synthesizers. And unlike the powder blue leisure suits of that era, the Jupiter 4 is still magnificent. The JP4 is the first of the holy trifecta of Roland Jupiters. The Jupiter 6 was released in 1983, and the Jupiter 8 is from 1981, and owning any of these synthesizers will make you the envy of keyboardists everywhere. Neither is a scaled-down version of any of the others. They are all three very different and very desirable. In Roman mythology, Jupiter was the king of the gods, and all three of these Jupiter synthesizers are true to the namesake. This Jupiter 4 came to us from Russia, and it's set up to use 220 volt AC input. And so what I want to do is convert this to be able to use it in the United States. And so not only am I going to replace the power cord, but I've pulled out the power transformer, and I'm going to replace that with one that I actually found in a Yamaha keyboard, and it's designed for 120 volts input, and then the outputs should match the same as the original Roland transformer. So I've got the new transformer sitting in place where the original Roland transformer was, and 2 of the mounting holes match up perfectly. The other 2 are spaced a bit differently, but all this mounts onto an aluminum base plate, so I just need to drill a couple of holes, and then it's a bolt and nut that holds each of these corners in. So I've got the input of the transformer wired up to the power switch, so we're ready to send power into this, and I've changed out the AC plug for a US style plug. So then the next step I'm going to do is remove this connector, because these wires will be soldered. And then I'm going to test the output from these wires just to make sure everything is copacetic as far as the voltage we're getting out of this. And one other thing I might add is that I have all of the outputs from the power supply unplugged. So when I do hook this up, it's only going to be running the power supply, nothing else powered as far as the synthesizer goes. And that's so that I can test the actual output voltages of the power supply board and make sure everything is 100% correct before I hook it up to the rest of the circuitry of this expensive and collectible synthesizer. The blue wire should have about 12 volts AC coming out. The red wires should be about 40 volts between the two reds, and each red against the black should give you 20 volts. So we have 13.3 volts there, so that's perfect. Want to make sure these don't touch each other. And on the red wires, so there's 40.7 volts, perfect. And 20.4 volts on the center tap, so that's perfect. So that's exactly what we're looking for. And so now I'll go ahead and wire these up to the power supply board. Okay, now sort of the moment of truth. I have the output wires from the transformer soldered onto the power supply board. So what I'm going to do now is power on, and then hopefully we don't blow any fuses or anything, and I'll just measure the output voltages here on these connectors from the power supply. This is what feeds the rest of the keyboard. So these have to be exactly right. And these are going to be DC voltages. We measured AC voltages coming off the transformer, but now after going through the power supply and getting rectified, these are going to be DC voltages. Let's turn this on. Power's up. So let's see what we got here. Everything is hooked up now, but for some reason I'm not getting any voltage when I measure the power supply outputs. Have I done something terribly wrong? Suddenly I get nothing. I don't know what the crap is going on with this thing. After doing some detective work, it turns out the culprit was the freaking power switch. Right in the middle of my power supply modification, the power switch dies. Crazy. So this is a double pole switch. It's got 4 solder connections, and so when you push the switch, when you turn the power on, basically, this pin connects to that pin, and on a separate circuit, this pin connects to that pin. And what happened with this switch is half of it's working, half of it decided not to. We don't have the exact same switch to replace it with, but we do have a double pole switch here that has the same basic layout, and it fits fine, so we can solder this one in and see if we can get down to business. So now with the switch replaced, we had to replace this one fuse with a different rating just for the new voltage, and now we'll test the output voltages from the power supply. Plus 5 volts, plus 15 volts, and minus 15 volts. That's perfect. Finally, with the power supply performing as it should, it's time to mount the new transformer permanently. So I hand the Jupiter off to Gerald to get the new holes drilled and get that heavy transformer securely attached. As the owner of Syntaur, it's exciting to see the company grow, but a very real part of growing is growing pains. And the worst of them is our constant battle with emails. We get so many emails each day that we simply can't keep up with them. Our company philosophy is that we're going to give top-notch customer service, so it drives me bananas when I see that we're buried in unanswered emails. And it's especially disturbing when I find that a customer reported some sort of problem and his email simply went unanswered for an embarrassingly long time. Yeah, but the issue is that his email was never answered.
Yeah, he's not placing blame. He's just saying.
We've tried just about everything we can think of to manage emails better, and we're supposed to give top priority to anything that's a problem with an order. We also get lots of emails with questions about parts and repair issues, and there just aren't enough hours in the day to answer all of these. Cody proposed the idea of setting up our own forums so that we could steer many of the tech questions there, and that way, instead of answering one person privately, we could publicly answer a question that other people might also be interested in. Besides, many of our customers are repair techs, and they might have even better answers than we do. I think it's a great idea. We decided to give it a go. Cody really comes up with some good ideas, things that old geezers like me don't even think about.
We know there's a lot of Syntaur fans out there, and we're hoping we can bring them together to share their knowledge and hopefully create a good community.
After a bit of work, Cody got the new Syntaur forums off and running, and it's been really cool watching the action. Come and join us. We'd love to see you there. Thankfully, this Jupiter 4 was in pretty good cosmetic shape when we received it. It does have a few issues though, besides the fact that it ran on 220 volts, and we're about 100 volts short of that here in the old US of A. One of those issues is the bender. On rolling synths like this, the bender lever is attached with a set screw, and it needs to be positioned correctly on the potentiometer, otherwise it bends by different amounts in the up and down directions. I have it dialed in to bend up an octave with the full travel of the lever, but when you bend down fully, it goes way beyond an octave. So that's something we'll need to fix. And just like on most old keyboards that we get in, dirty switches and slide pots can make it seem like something in the circuitry is broken. For instance, we thought something was broken with the bender at first, because it wouldn't bend at all. It turns out that it was just dirty switch contacts. A quick spray of deoxit into the bender switch, followed by a bit of exercise, solved the problem immediately. The Jupiter 4 has been used by a ton of artists, from Duran Duran to Depeche Mode. In fact, on the Duran Duran song Rio, the Jupiter 4 is used for the fast arpeggiator line that runs throughout the song. I was curious how Nick Rhodes got that arpeggiator pattern in the song Rio, because it doesn't really match the modes of the arpeggiator on the Jupiter 4. You have up, you have down, up plus down, or random, and the pattern doesn't match any of those. Here's the up and down pattern. And that's a good starting point, but it doesn't really match what goes on in the song. So a little experimenting, and I sort of found the answer. If you use the hold button, then you can play some notes and end up with a pattern that's not straight up or down or up and down. So I'm guessing that's the technique that Nick Rhodes used to get the arpeggiator pattern in Rio. The Jupiter 4 is a vintage synth worth getting excited about. But every now and then, we get the chance to get really excited about a keyboard. That's why I took the family on vacation to Utah, where we would just happen to drive back through Arizona, where there just happened to be a guy named Cameron who had a keyboard of interest.
Well, folks, we're here in an undisclosed location in Phoenix, Arizona, picking up some kind of special keyboard that's not working at all.
It is a special keyboard. It's the holy grail of polyphonic synthesizers. It's a Yamaha CS-80, and yeah, we're spending thousands of dollars to buy a keyboard that doesn't work. It's the biggest purchase we've ever made for a single keyboard, but on the other hand, if and when we get it refurbished and working, it'll be the biggest sale we've ever made for a keyboard, so it'll bring the highest dollar. And these are very rare and very wonderful, so I'm even more excited than Cody is. The Yamaha CS-80, first made in 1976, the year I graduated from high school. Only about 2,000 of these were made, and they are one of the most desirable and one of the most expensive polyphonic synthesizers you can find. That's if you can find them at all. I was surprised to come across someone who even owned one, even a broken one. and then outright giddy that he was open to the idea of possibly selling it. It took about a year of subtle negotiating, but Cameron eventually decided to sell me his after it started smoking the last time he plugged it in. It was not easy for him to part with his CS-80, which he purchased brand new, but he knew it deserved to be repaired and sent on to a new home. So we packed up 220 pounds of analog goodness and wheeled this beast to the Synthmobile, where it would start its journey back to Texas and hopefully soon back to health.
Thanks again. Good to meet you.
Good to meet you, Robbie.
Good to meet you too.
We'll see y'all. We'll see you through the ether waves, and I'll send you some videos.
Sounds good. Yeah, it'll be fun.
Get it going.
And then I'll really bawl when I hear the roar.
Now that this Jupiter 4 is fully repaired and sounding great, it's time to think about whether we can do some mods. So I always like to think about what we could make a keyboard do that it didn't do originally, but it would make it really cool if we could make it do that. So a couple of things come to mind. And let me also state that with a keyboard like the Jupiter 4 or something vintage and really cool and collectible like this, I hate to even think about mods that require drilling the panel or changing the outside appearance. So if we can do something that makes it stay looking exactly like it does, and it would even be reversible if someone wanted to go back and make it, you know, fully original again, that's the way to do a mod. First thing that comes to mind is, wouldn't it be cool if it had Aftertouch, where you could use Aftertouch on the keys to trigger vibrato on a note or to open up the filter, something like that? Man, that would really be cool. The other thing is on the Jupiter 4 bender, it's unlike the Juno 106, for instance, where you can bend up and down, of course, but on the Juno 106 you can also push it forward, and that can trigger mod or something like that. So those things are absent on the Jupiter 4, and I'd love to have something that's a little more expressive like that for when you play it. So yeah, Aftertouch on the keys or add that bender mod somehow. Those are the things I'm going to check into. I've been anxious to take a look at the keybed of this thing, because I'm hoping that underneath here there's a flat surface where we could maybe put a Aftertouch strip instead of just the normal felts that are there. We might be able to put an Aftertouch strip and make this keyboard do some things that it wasn't designed to do. So I'm going to remove a key or two. Yo! We start by pulling the key return spring off. And once you do that, you can just lift the key up and back a little bit. Oh, that's nasty. Okay, and then we can see right here that there is a felt strip that runs the width of the keyboard, and the perfect thing is that the black keys and the white keys press down equally on this felt strip. So that means that if we can find an Aftertouch strip that has a felt the same thickness of that, then we can basically put a resistor under each key where pressing harder makes that resistance change, and then we can use that to open up the filter or add vibrato or something like that. So this is looking real good. Adding Aftertouch to the keybed seems like a much better upgrade than adding a modulation switch to the bender. And it looks like mounting a strip under the keys will also be far easier than modding the bender. But we still need to figure out the electronic end of things. My notion is to make the key pressure always add vibrato. That means routing the LFO directly to the oscillators, with the depth controlled by the resistance of the Aftertouch strip. By doing it this way, we're not having to change anything about how the LFO is being routed and used otherwise. We're adding a feature and not having to sacrifice anything. So we embarked on a bit of R&D, which basically means staring at schematics and doing some poking and prodding and a lot of head scratching.
Don't do nothing.
Nada?
of course, this is kind of a weird. It's the only thing.
Just a piece of water.
It's the only thing I could find. Yeah, I'm just gonna go get some plain roll wire.
12 pieces of wire joined together with paper clips and masking tape.
I can't.
Our results are tenuous at best. After a few false starts, we finally hit on the right setup.
Voila.
Pressing on the strip finally made the sound wiggle. Success! We stayed pretty late figuring out how to build in the Aftertouch, and I couldn't wait to get back the next day and start getting it put together. Gerald removed all of the keys on the Jupiter 4 and made them look as pretty as possible. Rubbing alcohol works well for getting off surface dirt, and for getting off tougher grime and rubbing out scratches, we use Syntaur's Key Renew key polish. We want the keys of this classic beauty to look as new as possible before they go back on. The felt strip under the Jupiter 4's keys just happens to be the same dimensions as the Aftertouch strip used on many modern keyboards. The strip from an M-Audio Axiom Air 49 is the perfect fit. It's already the right length for 49 keys. But in case you want to do this and you only have a longer strip, just snip it to length. That's all it takes. There are 2 wires that lead to the strip, and when nothing is pressing, there's infinite resistance between the 2. Once pressure is applied, the resistance drops according to how hard you're pressing. So it's like we're sending the LFO through a valve. The valve is normally turned off, but by pressing on a key, the valve opens up and lets the LFO signal through. Now that I have the Aftertouch strip installed, I'm finding out we have a couple more problems that we need to deal with. First of all, the Aftertouch seems to only affect the pitch in a negative direction, at least the way we have it currently wired in. So we're going to have to find a better wiring scheme, better way to hook this up electronically, because what's happening is when we apply a sine wave to the pitch, it's not making it go up above pitch, it's only making it go flat below pitch. So in essence we get the pitch at a plateau, and then it dips, and then it goes back up to the plateau, and then it dips. I'll show you what I'm talking about. I'll install this black key temporarily. So you can hear it plays the pitch, dips, plays the pitch, dips. That's not too good a vibrato. So we're going to need to figure out a better way to hook in our Aftertouch strip. I don't think that'll be a problem. The bigger problem is, though, that when I looked at these keys, I looked at the white key and I saw it's a perfectly flat surface on the bottom, and that we have one strip going across the keyboard, and I assumed that all keys would be the same pressing on that strip. But now that I've got them all off and looking closer, the black keys actually have a little protrusion here. The black key reaches down a little farther, and so the black keys work fine on this Aftertouch strip. The white keys aren't really doing anything. Our sales manager at Syntaur is Eddie Perez, and he also manages our recording studio.
How can I help you?
A nicer guy you will never meet. But I was a little surprised just how friendly he got when we were texting about something not long ago. Here's how it went. Eddie sent me a text saying he'd be working at the studio for a bit, and his buddy Rajon might be stopping by to take care of a plumbing problem we were having there. Cool. I texted him back to let me know if Rajon had any questions. I guess Eddie was having 2 conversations at once, and probably got me mixed up with his wife, because his response to me was, "Okay, love you." I got quite a kick out of that and texted him back, "Love you too, man." And of course I throw a "love you" onto the end of our text now and then, just to keep teasing him. Ah, Syntaur, we're like a family. One other interesting thing about Eddie, he's been a major player in the Tejano music scene for years, and most notably, he toured and recorded extensively with Latin superstar Emilio. And now, Eddie's up for a Latin Grammy.
I worked on an album with the group Alamo out of San Antonio. I recorded some instrumentation and some engineering. And I've been recording with them for like 18 years, so yeah.
Wow.
Pretty excited.
Yeah, that's great.
1 week away.
In the end, Alamo and Eddie did not take home the Best Tejano Album Award, but Eddie walked the red carpet in Vegas and brought home a swanky medal for being an important part of that Grammy-nominated album. After doing a bit more staring at both the schematics and at the Jupiter 4's guts, I finally figured out the best way to hook in the Aftertouch strip, and it's really pretty simple. We've already tapped off of the LFO, with this wire connected to the module control board, and we just need to add that wiggly signal to the tuning pot. That's all it takes. To solve the problem of the white keys not pressing on the Aftertouch strip, I noticed that the bottom of the keys have some rectangular pockets just above where they contact the strip. So I searched through all of our thingamajigs, winger-wangers, and doo-wah-ditties until I found something that fit snugly into that opening and protruded down far enough to press on the strip. It's a little bit tedious getting each white key outfitted and adjusted correctly, but the result is very expressive. Finally, the last key went on, and we had the world's only Jupiter 4 that responds to key pressure. How cool is that? With the key pressure working nicely, we decided to add one more element to it, a switch to disable it. I realized this was necessary in playing the factory presets, many of which don't use the LFO as part of the sound. When we then kick it in with key pressure, we found that it's very much the wrong speed, either way too fast on some programs or drunkenly slow on others. And since these presets cannot be changed, it's safer to be able to just disable the Aftertouch. It's a simple thing to accomplish, it just requires a switch. But it puts me in a moral dilemma. I can't mount a switch without drilling, and I sure didn't want to drill the panel of this rare synthesizer. So I talked it over with Gerald, and we came up with a good compromise. We'll mount a switch on the bender panel instead of having to drill the main panel. And I'm using a switch that's identical to the other Jupiter switches, so it's going to look just like a factory installation. It'll have an Aftertouch on position, an off position, and a third bump position, where you can momentarily kick in the Aftertouch when it's otherwise off, similar to pushing the bender forward on a Juno 106. I think it'll be really cool. All Gerald has to do is drill a hole in the bender panel that has to be oblong instead of round, and look perfectly like the other switch holes. I'm sure he's got an oblong drill bit somewhere.
The boss man got aliens on the brain. He done lost his mind.
Look at that, it's perfect. I knew he had an oblong drill bit. Now we just need to label this, so I've ordered some dry transfer letters that we can rub on there, and then we'll just spray a protective coating over it, and we should be good to go. We recently hosted an event called Syntomania, where we had an insane number of vintage synths on display, as well as performances and amazing door prizes from our amazing sponsors, Korg and Reverb. And the event wrapped up with a Gary Newman concert in the same venue. One of our performers was Moonray, an Austin duo that relies heavily on synthesizers for their sound, and they mentioned to me that they were on the lookout for a Jupiter 4. So, as we were wrapping up our mods here, I contacted them to see if they might be interested in checking out this unique Jupiter, and they jumped at the chance. Just in the nick of time, the dry transfer lettering arrived, and it looks like a pretty good match to the original screened lettering. Getting this bender panel finished is the last thing that needs to be done before we're ready to show this beast off to Moonray. Finally, with all the pieces back together, this customized Jupiter 4 still sounds as great as ever. But with the unique Aftertouch response, it's so much more expressive to play.
How you?
Good.
Cool.
Hey, how are you doing, Cody? Nice.
Yeah, this is pretty.
Oh yeah.
Good work, man. That's really good. So the aftertouch and then bump it as if okay. So I like that a lot too. That's a
Just like the
We picked up a rare Jupiter 4 from a contact in Russia and swapped out the power transformer to convert it to North American use. A few additional repairs later, and we had it back to its original analog glory.
Yeah, and I know you. You ain't gonna leave well enough alone, are you?
Heck no. I wanted to make this Jupiter truly unique, so we converted the keypad to add vibrato when you press harder, and we added a switch to control it as well.
Yep, now it's the only Jupiter on Earth with this cool feature, and it's going to Moonray right up the road in Austin, Texas.
We also found a Yamaha CS-80 and brought it back from Arizona. I was pretty overwhelmed by this new find, and Cody was, well, he was just whelmed. We'll be working on that one soon, so check back with future Syntaur on Synth Wizards.
What happened to the boss man? Aliens got up in his brain.